Okay, that concludes our public hearing tonight. Let me say at the conclusion, before we have a motion to close, you have a comment?
Yes, sir. After yours.
I'll wait on you, Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, Mayor. It strikes me that one thing we should consider is conducting the manager's presentation on the same night as this public hearing, because there's a lot of information that we've gotten over the last 3 months that the public hasn't had a chance to hear. I would suggest, it just struck me because, for example, there are municipalities around Charlotte, Statesville, Mooresville, municipalities in Union County that are also contemplating tax increases, and there's some reasons behind it that we don't have a chance to really dig into tonight, but I think it would be very useful to have in the future the manager make a presentation regarding the budget on the same night as this public hearing. We saw the presentation, we saw the slides, we heard the explanations, but most of these folks have not heard any of that, and whether it would change their minds or not, I don't know, but I think it would at least be valuable to educate people as much as we can regarding the contents of the budget, both the CIP and the operating budgets, so that they understand what it is we're dealing with and the challenges we're trying to address. So if I might make that referral to the council manager, former restructuring government committee.
Yeah, you guys set the agenda. So.
We're not meeting again until. No, I'd be happy to take that on. We're, as you all know, we are going to be revisiting the issue of funding for the after-school partners. So I'd be happy to take that on as well, because I think it would be useful for the benefit of the public.
Great. Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Without objection, we can have that done. Let me just say a couple of things, because, you know, first of all, I'm appreciative of the fact that so many citizens came out to express their opinions tonight. The fact that people did come out tonight and in some cases have positions on different sides of the same issues is a reflection that you care about our community. And, you know, frankly, you can't have a community if people don't care. We're in a situation where we're facing, in my estimation, not a choice between good options and bad options, but bad options and bad options, in the sense that there's a cost to doing nothing, and there's a cost to doing something in this year. And let me talk about some of the other sides of the issues. The first is that we are a AAA bond-rated city. We've been a AAA bond-rated city for a long time. And to be a AAA bond-rated city over the last 4 years, with all of the turmoil that's gone on in the economy, is a pretty dramatic thing for any city to be able to claim. And part of the reason for that is that we don't get in the habit of spending money we don't have, and we also don't get in the habit of making decisions in a knee-jerk fashion. Second thing, and so one of the things that has to do with this AAA bond rating is the fact that our bond rating agencies are now starting to ask the question, how are you going to keep up your infrastructure in the future? How are you going to pay for it? What is your plan to deal with it? And if the answer is we don't know, that will eventually become a problem for us from a bond rating standpoint. The second issue is that we are in what I will call a pivot in terms of our growth patterns as a city. For probably 40 or 50 years, the city was manifest destiny, moving outward, stretching the limits of our borders through annexation and so forth. And every time that happened, the same pattern occurred. People who did not live in the annexed area paid for infrastructure. They paid to put in the pipes, they paid to put in the sewer, they paid to put in the roads, they paid to put in the street lights, they paid to put in all of the things that people take for granted, without the promise that there would be a return on investment. But what happens in a great community is that people want to come, they want to live there, and those investments ended up paying off in many cases. But to argue that this is the first time that any group of people on this body have considered making an investment with a view that that investment will pay off over time, it would be a mistake. That is the same formula that was used to build the center city of our city. Same formula. And 20, 30 years ago, there's a joke in this city that you could have driven through downtown and opened to both sides of the car door and you wouldn't have hit anything. That was actually true. But it was because the investments were made that people in droves have wanted to live here. So the argument that I'm making is that there's another side to this issue that we're having to consider. And let me add another third dynamic. I bet you that many of you who are arguing against the proposed capital investment plan tonight would also argue for sharp reductions of taxes at the federal level and the state level. And let me tell you something. They're coming. You're going to see reductions in spending at the federal and the state level. That's part of the deficit plan that was approved back last summer. It's part of what's happening at the state level. And let me tell you what that means for a city. It means that the money that gets spent on after-school programs starts to reduce. The money that goes into infrastructure like road construction starts to reduce. And the money that goes into our transit infrastructure also starts to reduce. And so these elaborate plans that we've built out over the last several years to grow our city start to get drawn into question. And that is a very serious issue that we've been talking about around this dais for the last several years, because we know that the public is stretched. We know that our city has taken some body blows, as has been said. But we also know this city has staying power, and we know that the people of this city are resilient. So I say all of this to say that I actually disagree with those who think that who are saying that this city doesn't have the ability to move forward in the future, regardless of what we do on this issue. I'm much more optimistic about the future of this city. But we've got some tough choices ahead of us, and over the next several days we'll have to vet those choices. Two final points. I am growing more concerned about this dichotomy, or the discussion of a dichotomy in our city between the wedge and this so-called crescent. It is not the city that I believe in. This is one city. It has always been one city. It always will be one city. And lastly, there have been some personal statements about the city manager that I think are unfair. The proposal that is under consideration has actually been the product of a lot of discussion with our business community and with a whole panoply of staff people. And what this council has asked this city manager to do, we've asked him to take the time we're in, to take the situation we're in, to take all of the information we have available and to help us figure out how to ensure that this community can have another 20-year run of economic growth. Now, you may disagree with the product of that discussion, and I can understand that disagreement, but I would not levy a personal attack at this man because he is standing on top of an organization that's worked very hard to come up with their best thinking on that issue. So we have a lot to think about, a lot to talk about. The conversation tonight has been helpful in giving us a frame for how the community is viewing this. But I do hope that everyone, regardless of where you think you may be on this vote, will at least take a minute to consider the other side. Because if all of our leaders and all of our communities across the country would take just 1 second to think about how someone else sees an issue, maybe we wouldn't have all the divisiveness that we have in politics today. So thank you.